They say we crave love, connection, intimacy. But what if that's not entirely true? What if what you truly desire, what pulls you in despite your better judgment, is not closeness, but distance? Why is it that the person who withholds affection, who remains aloof, cold, untouchable, is often the one you cannot stop thinking about? Why does their emotional absence feel more intoxicating than someone's presence? Carl Jung saw through this paradox long before it became a cliché of modern romance. He understood that we are not drawn to what is safe, but to what is unresolved within us. When someone is emotionally distant, they become a blank screen onto which your unconscious projects its deepest longings, fears, and unmet needs. They are magnetic not because of who they are, but because of what they refuse to give you. The aloof lover awakens your wounded inner child, still desperate to be chosen, still yearning to be seen. Their coldness forces you to chase, to perform, to regress into patterns you swore you had outgrown. And yet, you keep returning to them. You tell yourself it's love. But Jung would call it compulsion, a symptom of an inner split between the self you present to the world and the self you've disowned in the shadows. You are not in love with the person. You are in love with the possibility that their affection might finally heal the fracture within you. But what if that fracture was never theirs to heal? What if, all along, the magnetic pull you felt was not towards them, but towards the unconscious parts of yourself you've refused to confront? The game of distant love has begun. You think their silence is a challenge, a puzzle to be solved. But what if their silence is not about you at all? The truth is far more unsettling. Their emotional distance triggers your unconscious instinct to pursue what is withheld. This is not desire, it is survival. Carl Jung called it the activation of the complex, a network of unconscious emotions, memories, and instincts that hijack your rational mind. When someone is emotionally unavailable, they awaken your abandonment complex. Suddenly, you are no longer an adult making conscious choices. You are a child again, chasing after an emotionally distant parent, desperate to earn their approval. You tell yourself that if you can just get close enough, if you can just make them feel something, then you will finally be enough. But this is the trap. The more you pursue, the more they retreat. The more they retreat, the more magnetic they become. The emotionally distant person is not magnetic. By nature, they are magnetic by projection. You do not see them clearly, you see them through the lens of your unhealed wounds. Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So, here you are thinking you've found your soulmate when in truth, you've stumbled into the theater of your own psyche, reenacting a role you never auditioned for but know by heart. How many times have you mistaken emotional distance for emotional depth? How many times have you confused aloofness with strength, coldness with mystery, detachment with superiority? This is not love, this is projection. But the play is far from over. Have you ever wondered why you ignore those who offer you genuine affection, yet obsess over those who withhold it? Why does kindness often feel boring, while coldness feels irresistible? This is not an accident. It is the architecture of your psyche at work. Carl Jung understood that what repels us on the surface often conceals what attracts us at the deepest level. The emotionally distant person embodies an archetype, the untouchable, the enigmatic other. They represent the parts of yourself you have buried, your vulnerability, your longing, your need for connection that you once deemed too dangerous to express. Their distance is not a wall, it is a mirror. When they turn away, it echoes every time you felt invisible, every time you believed you were unworthy of love unless you performed, pleased, or proved yourself. Their absence forces you to confront the gnawing suspicion that love must be earned through suffering. But is that really love? Or is it just a familiar pain, disguised as passion? Jung would say this is the shadow at work, the rejected, unconscious, parts of yourself manifesting through your attraction to those who will inevitably withhold from you. You don't want their affection. You want their validation. You want them to confirm what you cannot give yourself. that you are worthy, that you are enough. But the more you seek this confirmation externally, the more it eludes you. Because the emotionally distant person is not here to complete you. They are here to reveal what you have yet to complete within yourself. And so, you spiral, further into longing, further from self-awareness. But the spiral has not yet reached its darkest point. You tell yourself that their detachment is a test, that if you just try harder, love them more fiercely, they will finally open up. But what if their distance is not a wall to be broken, but a boundary you were never meant to cross? Carl Jung warned of the dangers of chasing projections, mistaking them for real people. The emotionally distant person is not withholding affection to tease or torment you. They simply cannot give what you demand, because they too are ensnared by their own unconscious wounds, their avoidance, their coldness, their refusal to engage. These are not random behaviors. They are defenses, carefully constructed to guard their own vulnerable, exiled parts, the very parts that you unconsciously seek to awaken in them. But here is the tragedy. You are both trapped in opposite sides of the same mirror, you chasing the love you never received, them avoiding the vulnerability they never learned to express. And so you dance, a painful, circular ritual where no one ever truly meets the other. You project your longing onto their silence, interpreting it as mystery, depth, even superiority. But Jung would ask, is it really them you see, or only the reflection of your unmet needs? The emotionally distant person becomes your obsession precisely because they are an echo of your own internal split, the battle between your conscious desire for connection and your unconscious fear of rejection. And as long as this split remains unresolved, you will continue to be magnetized by those who cannot give you what you crave. But can you see the pattern clearly enough to break it? The dance continues, but do you dare change the steps? You think you are chasing love. But what if you are only running from yourself? Carl Jung believed that the greatest illusions are not those we tell others, but those we tell ourselves. And perhaps the most dangerous of all is the belief that your longing for the emotionally distant person is about them. It's not. It is about your refusal to turn inward, to confront the hollow spaces within you that their coldness so perfectly exposes. Their absence doesn't just hurt, it terrifies you, because it reminds you of the parts of yourself you have abandoned, your need for affection, your longing to be understood, your desperate hope that someone might finally stay. But rather than face these wounded fragments, you project them outward, onto someone who was never capable of holding them. The more they pull away, the more you chase. And the more you chase, the further you drift from the only place where true healing can occur, within. Jung would call this the failure of integration, the refusal to reclaim the disowned parts of your psyche. Instead, you outsource your wholeness, hoping that the emotionally distant person will complete what you fear to confront. But they won't. They can't, because their distance is not a flaw, it is a symptom. Just like your obsession is not love, it is a defense. Both of you are trapped not by each other, but by your respective shadows, locked in a silent, unconscious agreement to avoid the painful work of self-integration. So I ask you, how long? Will you keep running towards what cannot save you? The mirror is cracking, but will you look at what it reflects? What if the magnetic pull you feel toward the emotionally distant person is not a sign that they are your destiny, but a signal that your psyche is screaming for healing? Carl Jung taught that what we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. And so, you believe that meeting this distant, aloof person was meant to be, that the intensity of your longing is proof of some cosmic connection. But in truth, it is a psychic compulsion, an attempt to resolve through another what you have failed to resolve within. The emotionally distant person becomes a symbol, an archetype, the forbidden other, the cold ideal. They represent not themselves, but your unconscious narrative that love must be earned through suffering, that connection requires sacrifice, that intimacy will always be denied. Their magnetism is not in who they are, but in what they awaken, Your forgotten wounds, your childhood scripts, your internalized beliefs about love and worth. You believe that if you can crack their armor, penetrate their distance, and finally be seen, you will be redeemed. But Jung would remind you, this is not a path to liberation, but to further entanglement. Every time you seek validation from someone who refuses to give it, you reinforce the belief that love is conditional, that you must prove yourself worthy of affection. But what if love is not something to be earned? What if it is something to be remembered, reclaimed, within yourself? As long as you see the emotionally distant person as the prize, you will remain the beggar. But you are not meant to beg, you are meant to awaken. The question is, will you? Have you ever asked yourself why you equate emotional unavailability with value? Why the person who withholds their affection seems so much more desirable than the one who offers it freely? This is not mere preference, it is programming. Carl Jung would tell you that your psyche is conditioned by early experiences, by the patterns etched into your unconscious before you even had language to describe them. If love, in your formative years, was inconsistent, if affection was something you had to earn, chase, or long for, then you learn to associate distance with desire. The one who withholds becomes, in your mind, the one worth having. This is the tragic irony. What you now call attraction is, in fact, the echo of an ancient wound. The emotionally distant person does not love you more because they are hard to reach. They appear more valuable to you because they trigger the same primal pursuit that defined your earliest relationships. It is not about them. It is about the unfinished story inside of you, the narrative where love always feels just out of reach, where you must always strive, perform, and prove your worth. Jung would call this a complex, a repeating, unconscious pattern that draws you into situations that mirror your unresolved inner conflicts. And so you are drawn, not to the person, but to the role they invite you to play. The pursuer, the pleaser, the one who hopes that this time the story will end differently. But it never does. Not until you recognize the script. Not until you stop playing a role and start confronting the parts of yourself that still believe love must be chased. The emotionally distant person is not the lesson. Your reaction to them is. But will you allow yourself to learn, or will you keep performing the same painful scene? You convince yourself that persistence is proof of love, that your willingness to endure their coldness, their detachment, is evidence of your devotion. But what if it's not devotion, but addiction? Carl Jung understood that when unconscious needs remain unmet, they don't disappear. They fester, intensify, and eventually morph into compulsions that hijack your choices. The emotionally distant person becomes your drug. The more they pull away, the more you crave them. The rare moments of affection they offer feel euphoric, but their absence leaves you in withdrawal. This is not love. This is the trauma bond, a psychological tether formed not through healthy connection, but through intermittent reinforcement, the unpredictable cycle of reward and punishment. Your nervous system becomes addicted to the highs and lows, mistaking the intensity for intimacy, the anxiety for passion. But Jung would ask, why do you tolerate this suffering? Why do you equate love with pain? Because perhaps you have never known a love that didn't hurt. The emotionally distant person becomes familiar territory, the safe kind of unsafe. Their aloofness confirms your unconscious belief that you are unworthy of consistent love, that you must always strive harder, give more, and expect less. And so, you stay. You stay not because they are irreplaceable, but because they make you feel the way you've always felt, longing, small, invisible. But what if the very magnetism you feel is your psyche begging you to wake up, to stop repeating the same cycles, to stop mistaking suffering for romance, to stop seeking externally? What can only be reclaimed internally? The addiction is real, but so is the possibility of breaking free. Will you take the first step? You've been taught that love requires sacrifice, that to win someone's heart, especially one that is guarded and cold, you must prove your worth through endless patience and suffering. But what if that belief is not noble, but self-destructive? Carl Jung would tell you that sacrificing your authenticity in pursuit of another's affection is the fastest way to lose yourself. The more you contort, silence, and shrink to fit the mold of what you think they want, the more you abandon your true self, the very essence of who you are. And here's the cruel paradox. The emotionally distant person did not ask you to perform. They simply remained who they always were, detached, unavailable, indifferent. It was you who decided to interpret their coldness as a challenge. You who infused their distance with meaning, with fantasy, with hope. But Jung would ask, was it really them you were trying to win over? Or the absent love you've been chasing your entire life? The emotionally distant person becomes a vessel, empty of intention, yet filled with your projections. They don't reject you, they simply reflect back your own sense of unworthiness, and so you keep giving until there is nothing left to give. But here's the truth that no one told you. Love is not meant to be earned. Real love, healthy, conscious love, requires no performance, no sacrifice of self. It requires presence, authenticity, and reciprocity. Yet as long as you pursue those who cannot give, you will continue to betray yourself in the name of a love that was never truly there. So I ask you, when will you stop proving and start reclaiming? The mask is slipping, but will you dare remove it completely? You stand now at the precipice, the point where the fantasy of the emotionally distant person begins to crumble under the weight of your own awakening. Carl Jung taught that true transformation only occurs when we confront the parts of ourselves we have long denied, the shadow, the wounds, the hidden fears that drive our compulsions. And this is your moment of reckoning. The magnetism you felt was never about them. It was always about you, about the longing you buried, the love you withheld from yourself, the needs you disowned to survive. They were never your savior, only your mirror. The chase, the suffering, the obsession, all of it was a diversion from the one relationship you have spent your entire life avoiding, the relationship with yourself. Jung would call this the path of individuation, the process of integrating the fragmented parts of your psyche into a unified, authentic whole. It is not easy. It requires dismantling the illusions you've clung to, facing the pain you've ignored, and accepting that no one outside of you can fill the void within. The emotionally distant person was the catalyst, not the cause. They woke you up to the truth you were not yet ready to see. That your worth is not dependent on another's affection, that your love is not a currency to be traded for approval, that your healing is not in their hands, but in your own. So now, as the story comes to an end, you have a choice. Continue chasing the ghosts of your projections, or turn inward and begin the long, difficult, but liberating journey of becoming whole. The question is no longer, why are they so distant? The real question is, why have I been so distant from myself? The magnet has lost its power. The mirror has been shattered. Now, will you finally step through the fragments and reclaim your life? The choice is yours.